consecutive hand passes. Central Council will decide this weekend which rules will be trialled in the provincial pre-season competitions and the 2019 Alliance Leagues. While Ireland's injury woes are easing ahead of Saturday's test with the All Blacks at the Aviva Stadium, Andy Farrell saying today that Rob Kearney, Gary Ringrose and Kieran Marmion are all on track to be fit for that game, while Roger Federer is set up on Dominic Thiem in their second match at the ATP World Tour Finals in London. Federer took the first set 6-2, leads with a break 3-2 in the second, and needs a victory to avoid being a first-round exiter in this competition for just the second time in his 16th appearance at the World Tour Finals, Keith.
Brilliant. Time for the football show.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
In association with the faster-than-ever Boyle Sports app for exclusive price enhancements on the biggest games around. Download it now. Boyle Sports. Time to play.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Very welcome along to the football show on Off the Ball. Johnny's still here.
Still here.
Thought that went well with you and Pat. A little bit of animosity at one stage.
Gotten a few slaggings. It was a bit too convivial, but
a bit too nice, was it, for your liking?
I like the way he's confident without being brash, and he's self-belief is a big thing. You know, I'd love to know the amount of kids, the percentage of kids who go over to England with apparently the world at their feet, and
less than 1%.
Less than 1%, and you know, come back and actually completely fall out of the game. You know, I'd say you could reel off plenty from your time that you would have met along the way, and to do it, like, I know it was only League of Ireland, I say that in the nice possible way, but there was a fair bit of expectation that he would do quite well, because that was a good Dundalk team. And regardless of what, he was, you know, I suppose he was kind of like the horse that was bought for a lot of money, and then he was sold on for a fraction of that a few years later with it all to prove, and he dropped down a grade ostensibly, but he's been absolutely outstanding this season. You know, I'm not sure about the Ireland thing, how that would work, and he made that point then that they need to do it in Europe. I think he got one goal in Europe this season. He scored against Highjuk Split before for Dundalk, and he'd like another shot at that, but all the Dundalk players I really admire, they really value Europe, and they want to play. They want to play good teams. And in 2016, when they were up against Zenit and AZ Alkmaar, I'd say that was basically the highlight of their careers. You know, playing in these big stadiums and going toe to toe against like the likes of Axel Witsel, who we may discuss later on or whatever. So it's that kind of honing in on Europe. And you mentioned Stephen Kenny. It's all about man management, really. You know, tactics are.
He said he was a psychologist. He's basically a psychologist, the way he knows his players one to one.
You say about Brian Clough that if he looked at you and you were on the pitch, he could make you turn and look back at him just by that sheer presence. And that's probably a slight exaggeration, but only a slight exaggeration. But Kenny, you can just see it. If he entrusted his faith in Hooban when others would have probably given up on him, and he wanted to pay him back, because Kenny would let him know, I believe in you, and he would treat them individually, and I think that's what marks him out as a coach. He's an outstanding man, and he knew himself when he left Shamrock Rovers, his own currency was massively down. He flopped at Shamrock Rovers, and there's no other two ways about it, but he had to rebuild, and I think the clamour for him to get the Ireland job is becoming quite genuine. It really is, and I don't know what your views are on it, but I know for a fact we'd play a reasonable, attractive brand of football, and the players wouldn't be governed by fear, but ability and the freedom to express themselves.
I think he's done a remarkable job. I really do. I don't think that's in doubt. I think the way he's reinvented it again, losing players, the ones gone to England over the last couple of years, kept it going in the midst of a really impressive Cork team season before last, had to go again. And even the way you've mentioned about Hooban, he's impressed me. And that's what I was alluding to with him, how he used that disappointment and failure, if you like, in England, certainly what it's perceived on paper, as motivation to kick on. I just wonder whether he would be enticed by England again, because he looks quite content.
Yeah, it's funny, Dundalk don't have any players, maybe with one exception, maybe Robbie Benson, who want to give England a go. I think a lot of them they're a little bit kind of sore from the experience of going over there and struggling, because being honest, if I were offered more money than I'm on now to live in some northern town in England and not 100% sure that I was going to be working to the best of my ability, I'd be very wary of doing it, because I do enjoy living in Ireland. I think that's one thing the League of Ireland really has. Ireland, factors very high in all the indexes of a place to live. Very tolerant people, very high standard of living. But we also, the League of Ireland, it's actually a football league. It's generally teams who pass the ball, and it's played in the summer, so the pitches are good. And he's enjoying himself at Dundalk because they're playing a great brand of football. But if you go back to Stephen Kenny, if Dane Massey hadn't hit the post but had scored against Zenit, they would probably have won that game, and they would have been top of their group after 3 games. So the fact that he could do it against those top teams, I think, suggests to me that he's more than League of Ireland. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because we're still a small league. But I just like to see the international team believe in themselves and not be governed by kind of what they're not capable of, but what they might be capable of.
Speaking of Republic of Ireland, off the balls, Darren Cleary was at the Republic of Ireland press conference earlier ahead of Thursday's clash with Northern Ireland at the Aviva Stadium, and Robbie Brady spoke about his long-awaited recovery from injury.
A couple of weeks ago, a little bit different international level, but I played a 23s game on the Monday and then played 90 against Chelsea on the Saturday a couple of weeks ago. I've been training now for the last couple of months fully, and with some games I haven't started the last couple club level, but have come on last 25-30 and I feel good, so I think I'll be more than ready to play 2 if needed.
Robbie, you mentioned there that you've played 2 games back-to-back in quick succession. Talk to me about that Premier League comeback. Obviously a huge relief to get back on the pitch, but the day itself must have been a pretty difficult defeat to take.
Oh yeah, it was difficult. Probably one of the worst I've been on the end of. They were very good on the day, and we weren't quite as good as we could have been. It was a tough one, sort of thrown straight back into the deep end. But I think that's the way to do it if you're going to go back in, is to go back in and know what to expect week in, week out. Chelsea were excellent on the day, but I felt good. I still felt right till the end. I had energy to keep going. So I've no worries about fitness side of things.
With a serious knee injury, is it hard to convince yourself that you'll get back to where you'll be, and when you actually have that moment when you're on the training pitch and you're going at 100%, you're going at full tilt, and you realise you've actually properly overcome this injury? What's that feeling like, that moment, like where you realise you've come back from such a serious injury? Yeah, obviously there's ups and downs throughout the thing, and as soon as you get back in the grass you almost feel you're ready. And I was a little bit giddy at times, probably throughout my rehab, to say I was fit. But gradually, as the weeks have gone on, I've realised, and then when you get back playing, you're hitting should I measure everything nowadays? So you're hitting your high speeds, you're hitting all your regular numbers, and then you start to feel better. And like I said, the more training I've had and the more games I've played, the better I've felt. So I've got a few under my belt now, and like I said, I'm feeling good. But yeah, an amazing feeling to know to overcome something like that. But it's not just me that has to do it before, so and I won't be the last. So I'm just happy to be on the other side of it.
Well, we're craving good news after a tough year, and that is certainly good news.
You'd nearly forget, he's only 26, Robbie Brady, and he's in an absolute poverty of quality. He is an anomalous in that regard. He still has it, and
I'm a big fan of his.
I think you mentioned it earlier, where he could play, he could be a lovely one of 3 in a central midfield position, where he just has a bit of quality, pick up balls, be able to strike balls, because we're almost playing without strikers at the moment, or certainly without strikers who are expected to score goals, and he would have the quality to maybe fill that gap. But it's great news, when was the last time we'd anything to sell to even?
Well, we'll keep it a Declan Rice free zone. That was looking like positive signs at one stage, but obviously that's gone in a different direction. I don't expect that to turn back in our favour, to be perfectly honest. But Robbie coming back, James McCarthy looking like he's getting minutes under his belt at Everton, Seamus Coleman obviously back playing regular and playing well in the last few weeks at Premier League level again, and a good side. So there's signs of it. So for Robbie, I think this Thursday, just get 45, 60 minutes under the belt, look to start him on Monday, whatever's right for him physically at the moment.
Even get the crowd going, he's just be on the pitch. Yeah. But I'm a little worried about James Coleman, just in terms of post-injury. Can he quite get those levels that he was at? Because pace was such an important part of his game, and I mean, we don't need to talk.
He's 30 now.
He's 30.
Which isn't old, but
it's old in the context of the injury he had, and I don't think we need to talk about that for the effort he's made to come. But I would be slightly worried. It will be hard for him, I think, to get back to that level, and then Does that mean we trust we trust more Doherty? I don't really know, but I just like to see us play a semblance of good football on Thursday night.
Well, if you're alluding to the fact that Seamus maybe isn't as dynamic as he was before the injury, which would be understandable. If we are playing that three at the back, then play him the right hand side of a three centre half.
Absolutely.
Doherty, maybe if he's not playing on Thursday evening because of that facial injury, or Cyrus Christie, let's have a look. That's it. I don't want massive changes on Thursday. I'd like to have a resemblance of what's going to play on Monday.
Do you think is there any philosophy governing what they're doing in terms of formation, or is it kind of
normally I would say no. Last month we seen the start of the three at the back, stroke five at the back in competitive games, and I'd like to see that continue. We've seen it in a lot of friendlies recently from March, even in the summertime with the international friendlies. I'd like to see that keep going, because if it goes back to a back four tomorrow and then on Monday we look to a back three, it's very hard for the players to get their head around that. So I want to see that relationship being built up. I'd like to see a couple of players changed, maybe Egan and the Stevens left wing back. Obviously Glenn Whelan's going to play, so how long he's going to play, not quite sure, but I want to see something from Thursday night against Northern Ireland.
Something that's new?
Just the consistency of the system and that fluidity going into Monday against the side of like Denmark. But having said that, I think playing the three at the back against Denmark can cause problems.
That's dangerous with Eriksson.
Sisto, Poulsen.
Yeah, if we almost played the last two games as if let's just minimise
damage,
yeah. But that's fine. But it was horrendous to watch. So how do we make the next step of actually looking like we might actually create a chance?
Johnny, I'm realistic where we are. When you look at we scored 8 goals in our last 12. You even mentioned to Pat Hooban that we haven't got that natural goal scorer. Even Shawnee Maguire, who I felt would be the one to maybe be the focal point, be the goal poacher, the goal getter. His season's been interrupted, obviously, with injuries, unfortunately, for us and for him.
He needs to start scoring at club level.
He needs to play more often. Yeah. Even in the last few weeks, he hasn't started as many as I thought, but maybe they're just nurturing back up to full fitness. But for me, it's very simple. You need to keep the back door shut. And if those foundations are put in place where we're very difficult to break down, very difficult to play against, ugly, horrible, play a counter-attacking style, full of athleticism, I can live with that for the time being. You're grimacing.
Well, I'm grimacing because what you're saying there would lead you to think, okay, we don't concede, so we might nick a goal from a set piece, but by all accounts our set piece training is almost non-existent. So our set piece record isn't actually very good.
No, especially when
defensively it's not particularly good either.
Delivery and dead ball specialist. I know Robbie Brady coming back in will help that. Shane Duffy going attacking it, Kevin Long.
That should be.
I agree with you.
In the context of our limitations, you got to maximise that. When St. Pat's won the league under Pat Dolan, and nearly half their goals were set pieces. They had very good aerial players. They weren't actually great, but you got to maximise it. We all go on about we'd like to see us play, but we would like to see us maximise what we have there. And I just don't know. I don't really see where we're going at the moment.
That's my issue. I'm not saying we should be playing like Manchester City, like Barcelona, opening up, spreading, making the pitch as big as possible. I actually think the opposite.
Yeah,
and that's where my issues lie with the way the team has been set up. And even from the Denmark game last month going into the Wales game, I've seen a progression of, okay, that was a back five. James McLean was a left wing back, and he was in that grey no man's land. What do I do? Do I stick? Do I twist? By Tuesday against Wales, I thought that had been ironed out a little bit. So I want to see more of that going into these two games. If we're playing a back four on Thursday and then we play a back three on Monday, I'm going to go bananas.
Well, what will the crowd like? The crowd will be interesting because there's a large degree. The FAI's famous use of 40,000 tickets were gone for the. I can't remember which game that was. That was probably may have been the Wales game. But they were giving all these free tickets away because they know people don't have the appetite to go. And I will be interested to see how the crowd reacts if the first half an hour is just stultifyingly boring as well against a Northern Irish side that is governed by its own limitations to a degree as well.
Yeah, they haven't been great, have they?
No,
they've
and
lost 7 of their last 11.
They don't really have the players either. But I just like to see us have a bit of belief and give us something to cheer because, it's hard to be motivated by it at the moment.
Like your body language is summing up the thoughts of the nation towards the team. Really, it's a bit like it's flat. We're clutching on to any type of positivity. Robbie Brady obviously being a prime example of that.
That is positive. Even Obafemi, you're like, I've not seen him play, but on paper he's something, and will they try to chain him down to a future with.
I don't agree with that.
I don't either.
We haven't got time to get into that now, but I think that whole concept and the fact that we're still talking about this, he'll play on tours or he's part of tours when we're not sure about Monday. Nonsense.
Absolutely.
Nonsense.
Absolutely. No,
I agree in terms of what he could bring to the table in terms of pace, a player trying to apply his trade in the Premier League, getting a few minutes here and there, then that is positive. But the whole kind of will he declare, won't he declare, I'll speak to his parents, really? Are we here again?
You're definitely on the side in the Rice shouldn't have been used against Moldova that time to I agree with you there. It's like you have to treat these people as adults as well. If he wants to play with us, good and well, but as a guy who's young, quick, and he's on the verge of at least the odd Premier League appearance, he's something we actually just don't have at the moment.
No, I agree.
Our lack of young players playing Premier League level, staggering. There's very little happened. Kelleher is obviously a possibility at Liverpool as well, but after that we're in really dodgy territory. I think Ryan Manning is interesting. I think if he's well coached, he's a hugely exciting player, but again he needs to kick on. But at least he's playing regularly.
Yeah, he's playing regularly in the Championship, isn't he? Now, delighted to be joined on the line by German football journalist Raphael Honigstein. We had one of the games of the season on Saturday, Rafa, as Dortmund saw off Bayern by 3-2. Were you anticipating a match like that? Delighted to be joined on the line by German journalist Raphael Honigstein. Rafa, thanks for joining us. Saturday we got one of the games of the season. Bayern Munich up against an improving, constantly Borussia Dortmund side.
Well, I was hoping for a game of this quality, but I didn't quite expect it because Bayern had not been playing very well this season. They lack cohesion. They lack the kind of tactical finesse that we've come to expect, certainly during the Guardiola years. But as happened in the past, Dortmund brought out the best out of Bayern, pushing them all the way. Bayern on another day could have easily won the game, but Dortmund just had a little bit extra. And in a way, at the end, the game was a bit of a microcosm for the season because you had a Bayern team relying on their experience, relying on their power, on their individual class, but Dortmund ultimately with the pace, with the youth, with the freshness, just had a bit too much for them.
Were you surprised by the Dortmund team selection? I know you went with Mario Götze as a false nine. I was a little bit surprised with that, and I felt certainly in the first half there were opportunities missed, maybe because of that one, but certainly flipping on that, the substitutions that he made in the second half were very impressive.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Lucien Favre hasn't been getting everything right, and I think he made one or two mistakes in the lineup. Mario Götze was fairly ineffective, as you said. I also thought that Julian Weigl was really overrun. I can understand the rationale for playing him to keep the ball, but Bayern were just so dominant that it only really changed when they had a more muscular approach with Thomas Delaney and Mohamed Dahoud coming in, and up front with Paco Alcácer, who's been so outstanding, a real number 9 coming in. But that's been Favre's secret in a way. He's been able to realize mistakes and rectify them very quickly, and Dortmund have come countless times from behind. To do it twice against Bayern was hugely impressive.
When you look at the appointment of him in the summer, we've got two clubs where there was a lot of speculation about the Bayern Munich job. I think in general, the appointment of Kovac was probably a little bit underwhelming. When we look at Dortmund and Favre in terms of his pedigree, his experience from the Bundesliga in years gone by, has that decision certainly been warranted so far?
Oh, absolutely. I think Bayern would have loved to make that appointment. Favre was in the mix a few years ago before Ancelotti came in, but I think ultimately it was felt that he was perhaps a little bit too highly strung. He's not an easy coach to get along with. And of course, at Bayern, there's always a great need to have harmony and to have a coach that doesn't make too many problems for the big bosses upstairs. In Kovac, I think they found someone who perhaps just is a little bit too inexperienced and slightly out of his depth. They might give him a bit more time, but certainly Favre and the wider setup that Dortmund have changed when it comes to the squad, where they've made some really key signings, Axel Witsel being one of them, but also introducing the likes of Matthias Sommer and Sebastian Kehl to support the coaching staff in various roles. They just look like a much happier, more harmonious, more sort of joint-up setup, whereas Bayern are, by trying to play it easy, have actually done themselves a disservice and now have a lot of catching up to do.
Just sticking with Dortmund for a second, I was certainly very impressed with the recruitment in the summer. Favre obviously coming in as the head coach, but the likes of Witsel, Diallo, Delaney, who we've seen in a Danish shirt, causing lots of problems for our national team over here in Ireland, along with the likes of Jadon Sancho continuing his progression and development. It very much looks like two clubs on different paths. When you consider last year there was 29 points between these two sides, with Bayern dominating as per usual. The model that Borussia Dortmund have gone with, they've been searching for this for probably a couple of years, haven't they, since Thomas Tuchel left the football club?
Yes, that's fair to say. They had a disastrous year, really, with two coaches who didn't work out, Peter Stöger and before him, Peter Bosch. And they only scraped into the Champions League by virtue of goal difference. So perhaps it was not that difficult to improve on that. But of course, the vast improvement, the vast progress we have seen, I think has exceeded their own expectations. And as you said, it's come at a season where Bayern have shown weakness. It's not the first time in those 6-7 years, but it might be the first time since Jurgen Klopp has left that Dortmund can actually take advantage by being consistent and solid and sort of coherent enough by themselves. And I think it's a great testament both to their coaching staff, but also to the scouting, that all the players you mentioned have immediately improved the team and can be seen as a success, whereas the same really cannot be said of the Bayern side.
Just looking at Kovac as well, if they're, I think they've spoken about how they're not going to make a raft of changes in January in terms of signings, maybe no signings at all, but how long will he get if things kind of plod along as they are, given his relative inexperience? Will the fans kind of stay relatively loyal to him, or will they give it another couple of months? Because they're already talking about kind of signings from next season, but is there actually a faith from above and from the fans in Kovac?
I don't think there's real faith. I don't think there is real confidence, but there is no great appetite to make that change right away. I don't think there's any realistic expectation that anyone else coming in would immediately make a big difference. So Bayern might be prepared to do something that they rarely do, which is to almost write off the season and then make the big changes in the summer. Now, whether that big change includes him will be down on his performance in the Champions League and how that season pans out. If Bayern continue to struggle, and they're only fifth at the moment, then I think his position is untenable. If they finish in second and they just have to say, Dortmund were just a little bit better, so be it. They might give him one more year, also depending on who's available. But I think the big change will come in terms of personnel in the summer. Alphonso Davies, the young teenage Canadian winger, is going to come in January. That's the deal that's already been done. But aside from him, I think Bayern are keeping their powder dry and do what they have done in the past, and usually very successfully, which is to answer a setback by huge investment in an attempt to wrest that dominance back from their black and yellow rivals.
Yeah, you've said that as well before we came on air, Keith, that they may need a dramatic overhaul, just relying on the old guard.
Yeah, I just felt it last year, Rafa, and also looking at the German national team, when you look at the form of some of these big hitters that we've seen dominating Champions League and National League games for so many years, the likes of Neuer, Muller, who's struggled for probably the best part of 2 years, maybe, in my opinion. At the back, Hummels and Boateng in particular. I thought if they could have maybe just shook it up a little bit in the summer. Everybody points to Kovac and the appointment of him, and maybe it was an underwhelming appointment, but
maybe they don't have the personnel.
So much. Yeah, I just don't know what you feel about that. I think maybe if they could have got rid of Boateng, I know there was links with Man United and PSG as well, but I certainly felt, even towards the end of last year, looking at them Champions League way, and Ribery, Robin as well, coming to the tail end of their career, it did look like it needed a bit of a shake-up.
I agree with you, though, although I think the narrative of Bayern's demise is sometimes overcooked a little bit. I mean, this is a team that pushed the winners Real Madrid all the way. We're probably the better team in the Champions League semi-final. We wouldn't maybe having a different conversation if they go all the way, which they really could. Domestically, I think Bayern would still be in a pretty good position if Dortmund hadn't started winning every game almost. So, improving to the point where Bayern seem so far worse than they really are. But of course, you're right in the sense that maybe one or two players are a little bit over the hill. I think they managed the transition not well enough. I think they should have been a bit more forceful this year, ushering in that change rather than saying, you know what, one more year, we're going to be fine. Especially, now here's, I think, the key point, especially in combination with an inexperienced coach and with a sporting director who's very weak. I think you change any of those three things, let's say, one or two younger players, or a slightly more dynamic, experienced coach, or a better sporting director who can really support the coach, and I think we might have seen different outcomes. But because all these problems coincide, and they coincide with a Dortmund team who are for once in a position really to take advantage, I think the problems look a lot worse than they really are. But in a way, Dortmund have done Bayern a favour by showing them where the shortcomings are. And it might just be one of those Pyrrhic victories, because Bayern will strike back and investing heavily. But Dortmund can enjoy it at the moment and should really take advantage, because that kind of alignment of the stars might not last too long.
I was over in Italy recently for the Milan derby, and you can feel, I hadn't been to an Italian game in a few years, Rafa, but you can just feel Ronaldo, the difference he's made. But where do German football fans see the league at the moment? Because certainly in terms of previous dominance, it's not where it was at, but it almost looks like a pretty open kind of map in Europe at the moment.
Yes, I think as far as the Bundesliga is concerned, there's a great optimism, which is really based on the quality of the game between Bayern and Dortmund. But the overall quality looks a little bit better. You know, German clubs have done pretty well internationally. They're on course of qualifying, with the exception of Hoffenheim, but perhaps we couldn't expect that. It's their first ever Champions League, and they're in with City and Lyon. But the football is better. The football has moved away from a focus, and some might say obsession, with transition game and with pressing, to playing a bit more football. And I think that's made a big difference. And there are enough young players and enough young, interesting teams, I think, to keep everybody entertained. And what usually happens, and we can go back to 2012-11 with Dortmund, or even before that when Wolfsburg won it in 2009 and Stuttgart in 2007, is whenever Bayern show a bit of weakness, suddenly the league becomes very, very open and very exciting. So, suddenly you have Borussia Mönchengladbach in second, you have Leipzig really pushing, you have Hoffenheim doing well, you have maybe Werder Bremen staging a comeback. So even though the World Cup was bad and we haven't seen a German team win an international club trophy for quite a while, I think right now the feeling in Germany on the whole is that this is a league that's actually on the up again. Question is how far they can take it, because you have a Dortmund team that's a little bit inexperienced and young still, and a Bayern team that's still a little bit waning. But in the Champions League wouldn't be the first time when a team that's slightly over the hill actually performs still really well for some last hooray. So I think their chance is actually not that bad.
We were talking about Hoffenheim, weren't we, a little bit before, and they're one of those teams in the mix just behind Bayern Munich, and the whole dynamic of that, I mentioned to you, that just wouldn't sit well in England and possibly in Ireland. The manager, Julian Nagelsmann, going to RB Leipzig next summer.
Arranged so far out.
Yeah, and it just seems like I've covered a couple of those games, and I agree with Raf, they're probably that little bit of short in terms of quality, but you can tell he's a very, very good coach the way he sets the team up. And then you flip it over to the Leipzig side, they're just going along seamlessly. I know they had a poor result against Celtic last week, but going back a couple of weeks ago, they smashed Celtic all over the place. And again, just the dynamic of that, Rafa, doesn't seem to have made much a difference to either set of players or either set of clubs. Would that be fair?
I think it's fair. I mean, this is a fairly unique situation, because at Leipzig, the guy who's in charge of hiring and firing the coach is Ralf Rangnick. So he couldn't be the lame duck, even though he's leaving, because he's still going to be the boss of the next guy coming in. And I think the players know that. The players will not let him down. The players, I think, are motivated themselves enough to go back into the Champions League after tasting it in their first ever year in the Bundesliga. It's still a very young startup club. They qualified for the Champions League behind Bayern, and they want to go back to that. And they have the team to do it, really. If you think about, Timo Werner not even playing at the moment, and still they're doing so well. And with Hoffenheim, I think, the size of the club and the kind of the setup with a wealthy benefactor, but in a fairly sort of quiet area, there was never going to be any big repercussions, especially after Nagelsmann came from saving them from relegation to taking them into European football for the first time, and then taking them into the Champions League for the first time, all in the space of, 20 months. So I think he could have done anything he wanted, and neither the players nor the club would have really begrudged it to him. So I think these are very unique two kind of sets of circumstances that you probably won't see replicated in quite a while anywhere else.
How good is this kid Reece Nelson that scored 6 goals now in 7 games? He's only 18 on loan from Arsenal. It's incredible stuff for a kid of that age.
It's really good. is really, really good. He does what you want your attacking players to do. He's fast, he's direct, takes his chances, is an impact player, doesn't need a lot of time, doesn't need a lot of touches to really get going. And Hoffenheim have a way of getting players into the box, into dangerous areas. And he just does all these, he just answers all these questions so perfectly. And that's why I think, on the whole, English players are in high demand, because they bring a technical proficiency and a physical one that perhaps your sort of average 18, 19-year-old German guy doesn't quite have. And I think it's a match made in heaven. You have teams that play international football, play in the Champions League, like Hoffenheim, like Dortmund, with a need for young players and an opening for young players. And you have these guys who would otherwise be bouncing away maybe in the League Cup or playing in front of 5 people in the reserve Premier League, developing at that level. So you'd almost think, why hasn't this happened earlier? But it certainly will happen more as the success of Sancho and Reece Nelson paves the way, I think, for more guys like that.
I find that fascinating, because a few years ago, I think you're right, Rafa, there wasn't even an option. It wasn't even looked at, to my knowledge. And now you've seen it with the likes of Sancho, Ryan Kent, Reece Ox, with all these players in the last few years making a dent in the Bundesliga, that they're willing to look at that as
a logical option as well. Like, for the young English players are going to struggle to get into the Arsenal team. Like, sometimes they might not even have an English player on the team, and for him to get that experience, to come back, and playing in a really intense league as well. Like, the difference between that and the under-23s or whatever he could be playing at.
It's proper football, isn't it? Proper football. And the money that they can get them for, I think Jadon Sancho cost around 10 million quid, didn't he? If he goes to another English team, it's probably a multiple of that.
Absolutely.
Rafa, before we go, I'd want to get your take on Jadon Sancho, because he's a player I've seen all the way up from the youth team in Manchester City. He's had lots of headlines. He's just signed a new deal, hasn't he, for Dortmund. How impressed have you been by him?
Well, you cannot fail to be impressed with his development, especially after his first 6 months at Dortmund. He was a bit hot and cold. He was your classic, slightly raw teenager who would do something really good 1 minute and then something really daft the next. And I think they were saying in Germany he's sort of in between genius and madness, all in the same minute. But of course, now with Favre, he's got the best possible manager, because Favre is a guy who's obsessed with the details of coaching. I might have told you this before in an earlier show, but he will stop play and correct someone if their positioning of their wrist isn't right when they control the ball. He will correct them when he says you need to open your foot up. That gives you a better chance to play the ball quickly. I mean, Axel Witsel was the same. We're talking about, a 29-year-old Belgian international World Cup semi-finalist saying, I don't mind being corrected. And at first I thought, what is this guy talking about? But then I realized it made a big difference. So to have a guy who's so intent on bringing the best out of players, and especially young players, makes such a big difference. And I think he might have had a similar development and education under Guardiola, but of course, with not nearly enough game time. So for him, I think he was very far-sighted and very smart. And I think his family played a big role in that, in thinking, what? It might look a sideways step, or might even look like a step back to go from City to Dortmund, but it is the ideal environment to grow. And it's been thoroughly vindicated, because I don't think we would have seen him anywhere in the England squad if he'd still be a Phil Foden at Manchester City, playing 10 minutes here or there.
Brilliant. Rafa, really appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you.
Cheers.
Football on Off the Ball.
In association with the faster-than-ever Boyle Sports app for exclusive price enhancements on the biggest games around. Download it now. Boyle Sports. Time to play.
At Blackrock Clinic, we offer direct access to our expert team of endoscopy specialists. So if you're concerned about a stomach or bowel issue, we can quickly find the cause and whether it's serious or not. With a referral from your GP, an appointment can be arranged within 24 hours. For access to a world-class endoscopy unit, think first. Think Blackrock Clinic. Blackrock Clinic. When your experience needs ours.
Well, the night of the Pavilions is going to be our most glamorous night yet. On Thursday the 15th of November, you'll find all the latest high-end fashion, food and plenty of bargains and beauty essentials. It really will be a night to remember. And with 2 hours free parking and only a short drive on the M1, you can treat everybody to the red carpet. Visit pavilions.ie.
Make the festive season epic. This Christmas, only Air Prepay gives you great 4G smartphones from just $59.99 with unlimited access to YouTube and social networks like Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, an extra 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited calls to any network for just a €20 top-up. To enjoy more epic connections, go in store or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. Available on Air Simplicity. For full terms, details and fair usage, see air.ie.
Will your home feel the chill this winter? Then why not apply for grant funding of up to €12,000 from SEAI? Just imagine the difference wall and attic insulation, heat pumps or solar panels would make to the enjoyment of your home, as well as reducing your energy bills. So far, over 400,000 Irish homes have been transformed. SEAI, your energy matters. Apply for your home energy grant today at seai.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome back to the football show. Raphael, top fella. Enjoyed speaking to him.
What a command of thing. Like it depresses me how you hear these lads speak so fluent English and so it's grammatically correct, and you know, I only have one language and that's about as good as I can manage.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah. Lovely kind of red brick.
You're a fan of that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is that why you come in here all the time?
Well, I like it. This is kind of a little bit more. What's the word? Like it's not actual brick. Be
careful.
But no, it's not. Oh no, that is, yeah. But yeah, the German football is a lot to be admired about it. We didn't really get into that, but like the way their ticket pricing is structured, club ownership and all that, and great atmospheric games. Yeah. Like would be a million times better in the Premier League in terms of fans' participation. Like it's a lot of safe terracing as well. We spoke about this actually on Off the Ball AM last week. How they've kind of extolled the positives of safe terracing and great atmospheric games.
Yeah. We've got Adam Pope on the line from BBC to chat all things Leeds United. Adam, thanks for coming on.
Hi Keith, hi Johnny.
How are you getting on?
Adam, if we go back to this summer and Paul Heckingbottom leaves his post, is relieved of his duties as Leeds United manager. He came in, steadied the ship after Thomas Christensen coming in and not quite hitting the heights maybe that they would have expected. Marcelo Bielsa gets announced as the Leeds United manager. I, for one, whilst on holiday, was thinking this is going to be brilliant for the league. Can you tell us a little bit about how that actually came about?
Well, you're right. Firstly, it has been brilliant for the league, but the actual process was quite long-winded because Angus Kinnear, who's the chief executive at Leeds United, went out and after Victor Orta, who's the sort of director of football, has spoken to the owner Andrea Radrizzani, and they identified that Marcelo was the man they wanted. They started the negotiations. The last thing he wanted to talk about was money. He just wanted to make sure that all the I's and all the T's were dotted and crossed at the club and that it was the right sort of challenge for him. And that's how it happened. So it took ages to actually get the contract done because the last thing he was worried about was the filthy lucre, if you like. So he realised that Leeds was the challenge that he wanted. First time he's been in English football, and over he came, and over a period of 6 weeks, has literally polished the same players that were here last year, bar Barry Douglas, into a side that's genuinely challenging for the top positions now.
Yeah, Adam, that's probably the thing that's impressed me most about Leeds United this year, and the style in which they're playing, the bravery. But it's been, as you've alluded to, barring Barry Douglas, the left back, had come in from Wolves, which I was very surprised they let him go. Bamford unfortunately got that injury, but wasn't really heavily been involved. You've also got Izzy Brown, not quite up to speed as well. So what he's producing with this set of players was basically the players that were available last year.
It is, and what he's done, Keith and Johnny, is, like you said there, the style of play. He's got players, Calvin Phillips being the main one, I would say, who's been seen as a sort of, middle of the park player, box to box, was scoring goals a little bit last season, but he's got him playing at times as a third centre-back, but sitting in front of the back four when he goes to the back four and spraying the ball around, breaking up play and being absolutely instrumental. So he's got players playing in different roles because he's identified talents that other coaches, to be fair, haven't maybe seen or haven't exploited as much. But the style of play is incredible. I mean, it's always the same. There's 500 plus passes a game. I mean, they pass more than anybody else. Obviously, the goal difference until Saturday was way ahead of everybody else's. It's still joint top with West Brom. And again, till Saturday, they've had the least shots against him. So he's got the balance right in the style of play. It's front foot football, but they do, in the majority of times, manage to defend pretty effectively as well.
Adam, I get criticised a little bit. I'm even walking through Dublin Airport a couple of weeks ago and a fella stops me, Leeds fan, why do you hate Leeds United? Anybody that listens to me on here, I suppose,
over here,
massive support in Ireland, this should be said. But what I've said about Leeds United this year has been 90% positive. It's probably been 10%, I suppose, realistic in my approach. And my angle with it is, I'm not quite sure they can sustain it, Adam, with the squad that he wants, we should say. He had the option of bringing in more bodies. He likes a slimmed down squad, but the work he does, especially on the training pitch, by all the reports that you read, quite intense. And especially with the season, the championship the way it is, non-stop, some of these players as well playing international football. That's my biggest question mark, Adam. Can they sustain this challenge?
And it's a really fair criticism as well. You look at that squad, I think he's used in the championship 22 players so far, and some of them have been a few young lads that have come through the academy. He works on the principle, Keith and Johnny, that he will have 4 players unavailable to him for every game. That's the average. So even on a fairly short, slim squad, that's still a lot of players to lose, but that's the sort of mass that he works on. The thing is, he's lost key players at that time. Bamford, you mentioned as well. Kemal Roof was out for a while. Hernandez was out for a while, who's been sensational at 33. So it's not just any players, he's lost key players, but somehow managed to find a way round to keep them near the top of the table. They've not been firing as well at the beginning of the season when they had those first 6 games where they're outstanding. They swept Stoke aside, they swept Derby aside. They've not reached those heights. But he's working on the principle that those players, some of them who you mentioned, the Bamfords, the Browns, they'll be like new signings in January. Berardi as well, who's been a bit of a soldier, in a really good team, he'd probably be a squad player. He's to come back as well. So if you take that into account, hopefully they've had their jinx or their spate of injuries. He says the type of training they do and the intensity they do is not the cause behind the injuries. He says they've been freak rather than muscular. And when you look at Bamford, say, who went up for a header, came down and just landed awkwardly playing for the 23s, I can see what he means. So the evidence he would suggest is that this isn't something that's been caused by the intensity. It's just been a little bit of bad luck. But he never uses an excuse. He also says he doesn't need to bring anybody in January either. He feels that he's got enough in the tank. But I share those concerns, though. I do, Keith.
What's he like, Adam, from a journalist perspective? I mean, I guess we've all heard stories about Bielsa. If he's a genius, he's definitely like a little bit mad as well. He's a bit of a maverick, but by all accounts, his answers to even a rather anodyne question in a press conference can be a little bit drawn out. But what sort of impression has he made with the Hacks?
Well, he's been brilliant. They call him El Loco, but this was a guy that answered the door to fans with a hand grenade in his hand, back in his homeland. So there's no sign of that. He's super intelligent. He's super humble as well. And the thing is, he really challenges you because you don't really get away with a poor question. But as you say, Johnny, he will answer for 15 minutes on one question. We asked him the other day something like, does he feel a responsibility that he has to entertain with his style of football? And he gave a tremendous answer that basically said, we're borrowing the game from our children. So we, as head coaches, as players, as authorities, and fans as well, even though they don't always realise it, he says, have that responsibility to ensure that the game remains beautiful, as he says, rather than being destructed. He compared it to the planet, if you like, So we're destroying the planet, we're destroying football if we're not careful. So from a journalist's point of view, he's an absolute dream, and we have to savour these times because he might only be here a year, Who knows what happens in the summer. He's an extraordinary personality, extremely humble. He's just donated £2 million, I think it is, to a hotel back at Newell's Old Boys to build facilities back in his homeland at his original club. That's the sort of guy he is. The game's bigger than him, but at the same time, he's not overawed by anything. He's not overawed by the challenge at Leeds United. He's so obsessed and so immersed in it. But he's one of the most humble guys I've ever met in my life. And the way he plays football is fantastic. It's been a joy to watch for 90% of the season.
He's embraced English football, I think. I think English football it's lucky to have him. And this year in particular, it's the closest championship that there's been for years. It really is. Adam, there must be still huge hope. I know when he came in early parts of the season, those first 6 games that you've mentioned, but even though I think it's only 4 wins in the last 12 league games, there still must be a a real appetite and kind of way that he is bringing them, that the promotion is realistic this year?
Well, I think, Keith, if you take into that fact, and that big one that you said about will the squad hold out, I think at the moment we can say they're looking very good for a top six. The way they play, until I saw West Brom the other day, I don't think anybody's played better than them consistently this season. They're playing the best football of anybody. So, yes, they are genuine contenders. They don't want to talk about it at this stage, of course, because look how it fell away last year. But if you compare to, say, 2 years ago under Gary Monk, where they had a good season and nearly went into the playoffs, at this stage of the game, they're 4 places better off, scored 10 more goals. They're just 3 points behind the leaders. They're third in the table. So right now, everybody's feeling that this is built on something that bit more solid. So I think promotion credentials are definitely there for Leeds United. But as you say, it's any one from about 8 at the moment, isn't it, is to see who could go all the way.
Where are they off the pitch, Adam? Because it's hard to believe from, I suppose, somebody my age who was just, as a youth, was just so accustomed to Leeds being like a proper Premier League team. They're actually out of it for so long now. Where are they off the pitch? I know that's been their downfall for a long time at this stage.
I think they're the cleanest they've been for a long, long time, to be honest, Johnny. I mean, Andrea Radrizzani's been in now, for a couple of years, and this is a big throw of the dice. They've been through a few coaches, but he is a man that, as we know, is very heavily into his sports rights, and that's his big thing with 11 Sports. That's his love of his life. I think Leeds United was something that's really helped alongside that. It's given him profile, etc., but he's a man that doesn't like to lose, you can tell, and this is a major, major season for him. So in terms of finances, I think he's capable as it stands of running Leeds, say, as a mid-table championship club. Is he willing now to go in January and really push the bout and go for maybe the few players that they might require, whether Bielsa wants to or not, to turn them into real promotion contenders in terms of that squad? We'll have to wait and see. He has taken on investment from the San Francisco 49ers. They've got about a 10% stake of the NFL giants in the club as well. My feeling is that he will need more unless he's willing to sort of divert funds away from his sports rights sort of business into Leeds United if he is really going to challenge again. But this may well be the season. He might be able to do it as he is. I think they need another injection somewhere along the line because it's a big old behemoth to run. It's expensive. And if they missed out for the sake of a few players, how disappointing would that be this season? Because what a chance they've got. The league is flat. It's winnable.
Adam, I totally agree, and I sincerely hope they get that investment. Can't thank you enough for taking the time out to have a chat with us. And will you do me a favour? Will you just pass on to the Leeds fans that I actually like them?
I will, Keith.
Good man, Adam.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Adam.
Good to talk to you.
Cheers, Keith.
Okay, that was Adam Pope from BBC Radio Leeds. Gentlemen, we'll be back in a couple.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
At Eason this Christmas, choose a book, the gift they'll love, and get amazing wow prices like Donal Skean's Meals and Minutes for $22.99. Get The Skin Nerd or autobiographies by Des Cahill or Davy Fitzgerald, just $19.99 each. And The GAA and the War of Independence by Tim Pat Coogan, only $23.99. Eason, be inspired.
Some bus routes in Dublin are now operated by Go Ahead Ireland on behalf of Transport for Ireland. So if you take the 184, 185, 111, 45A, 59, 63 or 75, keep an eye out for the new look buses. On board it'll be business as usual, with the same fares and TFI Leap Card, free travel pass, Dublin Bus Rambler, monthly and annual tax saver tickets, all valid on these services. For real-time service information, download our TFI Real-Time Ireland and Journey Planner apps. For more information, visit transportforireland.ie.
Football Index is reinventing football betting. You can buy and sell the world's top players. Their value may go up and down, but it's not over with the final whistle like a regular bet. Football Index, reinventing football betting.
Start building your portfolio today at footballindex.co.uk or download the app now. New customers only, minimum deposit and conditions apply. Gamble responsibly.
You thought it was a one-day deal, a week at most, but you were wrong. The Black Friday event is now on at appliancesdelivered.ie, and the savings are epic. TVs from just $99.95, up to 40% off washing machines, up to 20% off dishwashers, and up to 25% off refrigeration. Savings even more epic than my voiceover. The Black Friday event, now with more incredible deals added at appliancesdelivered.ie.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Nice of Adam Pope to to join us. And if anybody hasn't seen Leeds play this year, you need to watch him, because the way he has them set up with, and he's already alluded to it, the type of players that he had last season. There hasn't been mass investment like there has been other Championship clubs where it's just reliant on those players coming in. He has transformed average players into looking like top players, the way they're playing.
Is it a seriously high energy game type?
High energy. Probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, the way he sets them up defensively. And what I mean by that is they dominate so many games in the attacking third, full-backs bombing on, but they lock on really well. Like Guardiola, Pochettino, they've all kind of grasped onto the way he wants football played. Like, they are real
Bielsa was
disciples.
definitely transformative. Like, he is his own man. He's so unique. But what you're saying there is very true. At that level, it's very hard to sustain that.
Especially,
like, they have about 60 odd games a season. It's crazy stuff. And with injuries and slightly older players, that'll be the big challenge. But I'd love to see Leeds back in the Premier League. Proper football town.
And even going to the stadium, you can feel the history in the stadium. It's massive. There's a few of them in the Championship. Villa being the same, Nottingham Forest, steeped.
It's an incredible league, the Championship.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of attendances, the quality and the money in it, compared to, like, it must be one of the top 10 leagues nearly in the world, I'd say. You know, even though it's the second
Year on year, it gets
Yeah.
stronger, obviously, with the parachute payments coming out of the Premier League. But the job he's doing there, the way he's embraced it, the way he's got them playing, I just worry whether they'll be able to sustain it.
Beautiful answer about, you know, we're kind of borrowing this from our kids and comparing it to the planet.
Yeah.
You know, bit like Stephen Kenny invoking the homeless crisis in his speech on Friday. You know, it's always interesting when they transcend sport itself.
Yeah. Tommy. I was just about to say there, I can't believe they've entrusted us with the whole studio for the whole evening. I think it's gone okay.
Were you going to call me Tommy? Yeah. Tommy's all right. I'll go with Tommy. Yeah, it's been grand. It's been good. First time on the Keith Andrews show. Yeah.
I know, still off the ball. We're getting in here. I need to get out of here. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to do it again.
Your Barnet is everything I hoped it would be. You know, I have to say.
That's all we got time for. Earlier, we asked you to identify our mystery voice. It was, of course, Paul Scholes. And congratulations to Peter Finnegan, who wins an Ireland limited edition series jersey and also goes into the end of week draw to win a pair of tickets to Ireland versus New Zealand this Saturday. It's all thanks to Volkswagen, a proud sponsor of Irish rugby. Tomorrow morning, OTBAM is live as ever on our social media channels at 7:45 a.m. Tomorrow night, you'll hear the best of tonight's Olympia Roadshow with Brian O'Driscoll, Paul O'Connell and Justin Marshall. Tom Dunn is up next. Take it easy. We done it, pal.
Top.